The squeal of suitcase wheels on the blue stone patio ripped me from my thoughts. My chamomile tea, now cold, sat untouched as I rose and walked towards the front door. It swung open silently. A perfect mirror to the suffocating quiet that had settled in my heart over the past few months. There stood Liam, my husband, bathed in the afternoon New York sun. He looked tanner, his smile wider than usual, a smile I once adored. Behind him, his younger brother, Finn, dragged an equally massive suitcase. Both looked like they'd just returned from a blissful holiday, brimming with energy. Except it wasn't supposed to be a vacation. It was a 15-day business trip to Maui. "Did you come out to greet us, honey? With this heat, you should have stayed inside resting," Liam said, his voice sweet and familiar. He reached out to stroke my hair, but I subtly moved, avoiding his touch. I forced a smile. One I'd perfected through countless rehearsals in front of the mirror. "I'm glad you guys are back. The business trip must have been exhausting." Finn rushed forward. "Hey, Audrey, this trip to scout the new resort project was draining, honestly. But the results were excellent." I nodded, stepping back to let them bring their luggage inside. The scent of Liam's cologne, the very one I'd chosen for him, filled my senses, but now it was tainted by another, nauseating stench. Falsehood and betrayal. I watched them take off their shoes, leaving their bags in the living room corner. They hadn't yet noticed the strange atmosphere, the storm gathering right above their heads. "Where's Nora, sweetie?" Liam asked. Collapsing onto the sofa, stretching his legs. "Did my little girl miss me?" "I left her at my parents' house. She missed you a lot. She kept asking when Daddy was coming back from his work trip," I replied, my voice flat, devoid of any emotion. I walked to the kitchen and brought them 2 glasses of ice water. "Drink up, you must be tired." Liam took the glass, downing half in one gulp. Finn did the same. The living room remained eerily normal. Liam began recounting his trip. Complaining about difficult partners and beautiful beaches he barely had time to enjoy, always busy working. Finn chimed in, eager to prove his fundamental role. I sat across from them in silence, toying with the wedding band on my finger. The same ring he'd slipped on my hand 10 years ago with promises of eternal love and protection. How ironic. When their stories ran dry, when they had nothing left to brag about, I spoke calmly. I didn't look at Liam, but directly at Finn, who seemed uncomfortable with my silence. "Was it a fun trip, Finn?" Finn flinched, stammering. Yeah, well, it was fine, Audrey, mostly work." I turned to Liam, the man I had shared my life with. My glare must have been ice cold. I watched the smile vanish from his lips. He was starting to sense that something was very wrong. "Liam," I called his name, barely above a whisper. "I have something to ask you." "Sure, honey, ask whatever you want," he replied, trying to maintain composure. I stood up and paced slowly around the living room, my fingers lightly brushing against familiar decorative objects. Our wedding photos still hung on the main wall, both of us genuinely happy. I stopped behind Liam and placed my hands on his shoulders, a gesture I used to do all the time. I felt his body tense. I leaned in close to his ear, just loud enough for Finn, sitting a few feet away, to hear. My voice was a whisper, but every word sliced through the air like a knife. "She is HIV positive. Did you know?" The room seemed to freeze. I could vividly feel the shoulders beneath my hands begin to tremble violently. I pulled my hands away, walked back to my chair, sat down and calmly crossed my legs. I looked at the 2 men in front of me. The smiles, the arrogance, the comfort from moments ago had vanished without a trace. In their place were 2 faces pale as paper, completely drained of blood. Liam sat petrified on the couch, staring at me with wide, bulging eyes, unable to process what he had just heard. Finn was in even worse shape. He jumped up as if burned, then collapsed back onto the sofa, his head in his hands, mouth hanging open, unable to articulate a single word. The silence stretched out until it became unbearable. I could hear the ticking of the wall clock, every second hammering the growing panic into the hearts of these 2 sinners. My masterpiece had just begun. 3 months ago, my life was the picture-perfect American dream. I had a brilliant husband who adored his wife and daughter, a beautiful, well-behaved little girl, and an interior design firm I had founded myself that was absolutely booming. I also had a best friend named Chloe, who had been by my side through the best years of our youth. I thought I was the happiest woman in the world until one fateful Saturday night. That night, after little Nora went to sleep, Liam and I were watching a rom-com in the living room. Halfway through the movie, Liam said he was feeling a bit tired and wanted to take a quick shower. I nodded, my eyes still glued to the TV screen. A few minutes later, his phone, resting on the coffee table, lit up and vibrated softly, signaling a new text. I never had the habit of snooping through my husband's phone. I respected his privacy and, above all, I trusted him blindly. But I don't know why, in that exact moment, a terrible gut feeling washed over me. The screen was only lit for a few seconds, but I had enough time to read the sender's name, Chloe. My stomach dropped. Why was my best friend in my husband's phone? I tried to calm myself down. Maybe it was a mistake or a joke from our group chat. Chloe was my friend, practically my sister. She was Nora's godmother. It was impossible, but curiosity and anxiety gnawed at me. With trembling hands, I picked up Liam's phone. The passcode was my birthday. I took a deep breath and unlocked the screen. Chloe's text appeared before my eyes, short but enough to shatter my entire world. "I miss you and the way you smell." I read that sentence over and over, each word stabbing into my heart like a needle. A lump formed in my throat. I scrolled up to read the older messages, a barrage of sweet talk, clandestine hookups, and the blatant lies they had used to deceive me. How long had they been together? How was it possible that I, the wife and the best friend, had become the fool in my own life story? The sound of the shower stopped. I quickly put the phone back exactly where it was, trying to keep my cool, but a hurricane was raging inside me. I wanted to run to the bathroom, bang on the door, and demand an explanation. I wanted to call Chloe and scream at her. Why? I wanted to make a massive scene so everyone would know the true faces of these despicable people. But then, another thought crossed my mind. What good would throwing a fit do? What good was a messy, loud divorce? I would lose my husband, my friend, and potentially the company I had sweat blood to build. Liam wasn't just my husband. He was the co-founder of AD Interiors, my interior design firm. Without him, the company would be in jeopardy. I had to be smart. I had to be strategic. I had to make them pay, but on my terms. I spent the next 2 weeks in a fog, pretending everything was normal, while secretly gathering information. I hired a private investigator, a former FBI agent, to dig into Liam's and Chloe's lives. The PI uncovered a web of deceit far more intricate than I could have imagined. Chloe wasn't just Liam's mistress. She was also sleeping with Finn, Liam's brother. And the business trip to Maui, it was a luxurious vacation, paid for with company funds, embezzled by Liam and Finn. The PI also discovered something far more disturbing. Chloe was HIV positive. She had been diagnosed years ago and had been deliberately concealing it from everyone, including Liam and Finn. The thought of my husband, the father of my child, being exposed to such a grave risk filled me with a cold, righteous fury. My plan began to take shape. I needed to expose their betrayal, their fraud, and Chloe's reckless endangerment, all while protecting myself and my daughter. I started by subtly planting seeds of doubt and paranoia. I left a small, insignificant item of Chloe's in Liam's car, knowing he would find it. I sent anonymous, cryptic messages to Chloe, hinting that someone knew her secrets. The goal was to make them suspicious of each other, to erode the trust that held their twisted alliance together. 2 weeks before Liam and Finn were due back from their business trip, I made my move. I knew Finn had given Chloe a spare key to his apartment. I waited until I knew he was at work and Chloe was out, then I let myself in. I found a framed photo of Finn and Chloe face down on his bedside table. I carefully flipped it over, making sure it was visible. Then, I took out my phone and snapped a few photos of the bedroom, specifically zooming in on the face-down photo frame. Using an encrypted burner email, I sent those photos, no subject line, no text, directly to Chloe's personal email address. I locked the door carefully and left. I could perfectly picture the ensuing chaos. Finn would get home, find my hairpin, see the flipped photo, and absolutely panic. He would frantically call Chloe to ask what she did, and when Chloe opened that anonymous email, she would lose her mind. Distrust, accusations, and paranoia would rip them apart. An alliance built on lies crumbles at the slightest breeze of suspicion. I knew for a fact the last 10 days of their paradise vacation had morphed into a living, breathing nightmare. Back in the present, sitting in my living room, Liam and Finn's pale, horrified faces were the answer to my question. They knew, or at least they suspected, the truth. My psychological warfare over the past 2 weeks had worked flawlessly. Liam was the first to react, stammering, desperately grasping for a lifeline. What? What are you talking about? I don't understand. I scoffed. You don't understand? You just spent 15 days screwing her in Hawaii, eating together, sleeping together, doing God knows what. And you're sitting on my couch telling me you don't understand? Every word was a bullet to Liam's chest. He couldn't deny it. His face shifted from pale to a sickly gray. Finn, sitting next to him, was shaking like a leaf. How? How do you know? Finn whispered, utterly terrified. How I know is irrelevant. What matters is that what I know is a fact. I answered with a voice made of ice. I grabbed my designer tote, pulled out a thick manila folder, and slammed it onto the coffee table. See for yourselves. The first document was the photocopy of Chloe's medical intake form. The words HIV positive, which I had highlighted in neon yellow, practically jumped off the page. Liam picked up the paper with trembling hands. His pupils dilated in pure horror. The paper slipped from his fingers. He slumped back against the sofa, gasping for air as if he were drowning. Finn grabbed another piece of paper. It was the photo of him and Chloe making out in his SUV. His face drained of all color and he dropped it like it was on fire. No, that's impossible. She told me she was perfectly healthy. Liam mumbled, his eyes glazed over. Healthy? I sneered. A healthy person who, for the last 3 years, has been sneaking into the infectious disease wing at Mercy General twice a month to manage her viral load. Do you actually believe that? Or were you just tricking yourself into thinking she went there for allergies? I stood up and walked over to Liam, staring down into his eyes, which were now brimming with despair. I'm going to ask you one last time, Liam. Before you slept with her, did you know she was sick? This time, Liam couldn't even look at me. He dropped his head, digging his fingers into his hair. His silence was a confession. He didn't know. This idiot had been played by his mistress and his own brother. He had essentially signed his own death warrant. I felt absolutely no satisfaction looking at his pathetic state. I only felt disgust. A man who threw away his family, his career, and possibly his own life just to chase a thrill. He didn't deserve another second of my emotional energy. All right, I said, smoothing my skirt and regaining my composure. Your health issues are your problem. Let's talk about something else. I walked back to the table and flipped to the next section of the dossier. The forged contracts. The fraudulent wire transfers featuring Liam and Finn's signatures. Almost $300,000 in 2 years. You two are real artists, boys. Embezzling corporate funds to bankroll a sick mistress. Do you feel like big, tough men? At that moment, both Liam and Finn's heads snapped up. The terror in their eyes was somehow even worse than when they saw Chloe's medical records. They couldn't fathom that on top of the infidelity, I had completely unraveled their corporate fraud scheme. I had boxed them into a corner with 0 exits. Since that fateful afternoon, our house became a tomb. Finn had bolted out the door the second I brought out the embezzlement proof. He didn't dare look at me or say a word to his brother. He just grabbed his suitcase and ran like a thief in the night. That left just Liam and me in the massive house. But the distance between us was wider than an ocean. We slept in separate rooms. I moved all his belongings into the guest bedroom and strictly forbade him from setting foot in the master suite. Liam didn't argue. He accepted his fate in silence, lingering like a ghost. He was no longer the confident, handsome executive. He was a dead man walking, consumed entirely by paranoia. I knew he wasn't sleeping. At night, I could hear him pacing in the next room, sighing heavily. Muttering to himself, he lost weight rapidly. Dark, hollow circles formed under his eyes and his skin took on a grayish tint. The obsession with the virus had hijacked his brain. I caught him using his laptop in the dark, frantically Googling. His search history was a graveyard of anxiety. Early symptoms of HIV window period, where to get rapid HIV test, life expectancy with HIV. He read voraciously, and the more he read, the more he spiraled. A simple rash or a pimple sent him into a frenzy. Examining himself in the bathroom mirror with eyes full of dread, he developed a dry cough from the changing weather, but in his mind, it was tuberculosis, an opportunistic infection. He was living in a customized hell, built entirely of his own paranoia. About a week later, I knew he had reached his breaking point. I found him in the living room, staring blankly at the wall, his eyes bloodshot. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. I placed a stack of papers on the coffee table in front of him, divorce papers, and a confession of corporate fraud detailing his and Finn's embezzlement scheme, ready for his signature. He looked at them. Then at me, his eyes pleading. "Please, Audrey, don't do this. I'll do anything. I'll get help. I'll change." His voice was a broken whisper. "It's too late, Liam. You made your choices. Now you face the consequences." I pushed the pen towards him. "Sign them, or I go to the police with everything, and you'll lose not just your freedom, but your reputation, your career, everything." He hesitated, his hand trembling. Just then, the doorbell rang. It was Chloe, her face distorted with rage. Her hair disheveled, she had clearly been drinking. "You bitch, you ruined everything," she screamed, lunging at me. Liam, in a moment of instinct, stepped in front of me, shielding me from her attack. Chloe, fueled by alcohol and fury, pulled a small knife from her purse and stabbed him in the arm. The pain brought Liam back to reality. He screamed, clutching his bleeding arm. I, playing the traumatized wife perfectly, called 911, with shaking, blood-stained fingers. Liam grabbed the pen and scrawled his signature on the divorce papers. That messy signature was the official death certificate of our marriage and his entire privileged life. I snatched the papers, tucked them into my folder, and walked over to open the door for the arriving police and paramedics. I explained to the officers that Chloe Evans had broken in and attacked me, and my brave husband had been stabbed defending me. While the paramedics bandaged Liam's arm and the cops took statements, I slipped into the kitchen and made one final phone call. "Frank, it's Audrey. Call your contacts at the FBI White-Collar Division. Finn is currently at the corporate office trying to shred documents. Tell them to raid the building right now. Catch him red-handed." I knew Finn would panic and try to destroy the paper trail. I wasn't going to let him get away with it. I hung up the phone and looked out the kitchen window. The New York night sky was clear and bright, but for the three of them, the apocalypse had just arrived. The following weeks played out exactly as I had orchestrated. Chloe was arrested at a motel that same night. The charges for aggravated assault and the intentional concealment, reckless transmission of a biological agent, HIV, made headline news. Once the story broke, several of her former flings came forward, some of whom had also contracted the virus. The DA threw the book at her. She took a plea deal for 8 years in state prison. Finn was arrested in his office, his hands quite literally in the shredder. With the forensic dossier I anonymously mailed to the feds, he didn't stand a chance. He flipped on everyone, confessed to the wire fraud, and was sentenced to 3 years in federal prison. My ex-mother-in-law called me, sobbing and begging me to drop the charges against her son. I hung up and blocked her number. It was the price he had to pay. And Liam received his own ultimate sentence. His lab results finally cleared, HIV positive. He completely broke. Penniless, jobless, and blacklisted from the corporate world, he sold his designer watches to pay for a bus ticket and vanished from the East Coast entirely. As for me, I went back to the clinic 3 months later. The standard window period for a conclusive HIV test. When the doctor handed me the paper and I saw the bolded negative, I broke down crying in the exam room, tears of sheer relief, tears of liberation. I was safe. Nora was safe. The nightmare was officially over. The divorce was finalized rapidly. Because Liam defaulted and didn't contest it, the judge granted me sole legal and physical custody of Nora and upheld the asset transfer. Liam's court-appointed attorney handed me a letter from him. It was a pathetic, rambling apology begging me to speak well of him to our daughter. I tossed it straight into the fireplace without replying. A year later, Nora and I had started a brand new life. We moved out of the suburbs and into a stunning penthouse in Manhattan. AD Interiors, now completely under my control and rid of the dead weight, was pulling in record profits. I was recognized in industry magazines as a fierce, independent powerhouse CEO. I told Nora that her father had taken a very long job overseas. I keep his memory neutral for her. It's the absolute last courtesy I will ever extend to the man I once loved. Today would have been our wedding anniversary, but I don't feel a single ounce of sadness. I took the day off and drove out to a quiet beach in the Hamptons, a place that used to hold so many memories. Standing in the sand, looking out at the Atlantic Ocean, I reflect on the brutal year that passed. I was pushed to the edge. I was broken, but I rebuilt myself into something unbreakable. My phone buzzes in my pocket. It's a text from Dr. Ian, a charming, brilliant cardiologist I met at a gala a few months ago. He's been respectfully pursuing me ever since. "Where are you hiding? Are you free tonight? I know a great spot in the West Village that makes an unbelievable butternut squash soup. I'm sure Nora would love it too." I smile, a real, genuine smile. "I'm out at the beach getting some fresh air. I am free tonight. See you at 7:00. Don't forget the soup." I slide the phone back into my pocket and take a deep breath of the salty ocean air. One dark, ugly chapter of my life has officially closed. A new one, bathed in sunlight and actual hope, is just beginning. Trust, once shattered, is nearly impossible to rebuild. Every selfish choice carries a devastating consequence.